Hey everyone, and welcome to the special bonus episode about the summer solstice from
Yay!
your Modern Mystics friends. I'm Jennafer,
Hi, I'm Lola.
and we're so happy to be with you today. I apologize because I'm a little bit nasally. I have like one of those ridiculously long summer colds that I really think should be outlawed, but I'm not in charge of the universe yet, so it's a thing we have to suffer through.
The
But
yet. Yet. Oh, I love it.
I I honestly really don't want that job. It feels like just too headachy. But anyway, but I say that sometimes, like I would order if I was in charge of the world, we'd be able to order weather. Like it would just be, that kind of like we order things on a menu. But uh, alas, nature is nature, which is good for our topic today, I guess.
Very
We're talking about
apropos.
the summer solstice, which is also called Litha, which is a pagan holiday called Litha. And it just celebrates the longest day of the year before we start going into a little bit less light, that little gradually until we hit the winter solstice and then the light returns. So it's one of those things that, I mean, aside from the fact that it starts summer, which I mean, most people I know like summer. Um, I feel like aside from the start of summer, it's also, an astronomical event. And the Earth kind of reaches this point in its orbit where one hemisphere is tilted most towards the sun. And here in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice is in June. And in the southern hemisphere, it is in December. And the winter ones are swapped, which is kind of cool.
Very, very cool. Also, with that seasonal shifting we have astrologically, summer solstice is in Leo, and the winter solstice is in Capricorn. With Leo, I think we're going to talk a lot about the Leo sign today because
Love it.
it really does contain summer solstice in a lot of ways. So I'm sorry
I
to
like
interrupt.
that.
While we're talking
No,
astronomically, I always think astrologically.
of course you do.
I'm sure I offend astronomers all the time that I link those two, but I sure do. So return.
I
It's
love it
back to
though.
you.
If you listen to our bonus episode about the spring equinox versus the summer solstice, one of the things that I learned from Lola is that it's not necessarily just one particular day. Like it kind of shifts a little bit. And so the energy of it, or the energetic peak or whatever of the solstice, can be felt a little bit before it, a little bit after. Kind of like when you have a full moon, there's still full moon energy before and after. And so even though we've designated a day for it, um, that energy can still be on either side of it in a lot of different ways.
So true. And it gives us a little bit of grace, maybe. I think holidays can tend to get really intense for people. There's so many traditions often, and people get really uptight about doing it at the exact moment. And if that works for you, if that's an important part of your practice, that's okay. We're not saying you can't do that. But if, like me, your life is a little chaotic and getting it at the right exact moment, even though you might know when that is, that it's okay, that honoring the season of you as well as the planet, right? Bringing those together of when it works for you, that's totally fine because this energy isn't a flash in the pan. It's elongated a bit. So I do think it's an important point, Jen. Thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. I also just think it takes some of the pressure off. Um, so if you're thinking, I must do something on the solstice, I must do a ritual, a meditation, a hike. I don't know how you mark it, but it's really fun because I feel like if you're not feeling well that day, if you're you've got other commitments or what, like, it just gives you a little bit of grace, and I'm all for things that give us grace because we put way too much pressure on ourselves most of the time.
Well, for those of you that celebrate Father's Day in America, they often hit summer solstice and Father's Day are the same weekend this year. And so you may have other commitments of other celebrations that are important, and that's okay. You can still take time to honor the solstice in your own way. And maybe you
Absolutely.
can convince the fathers to join you for your summer solstice celebration or not. It's okay.
I love it. Aside from the fact that it is an astronomical and astrological event, as you know, here on Modern Mystics, we're all about giving you different ideas or different ways to have a spiritual practice, a spiritual life, something that really resonates with you. And so there is a lot of spirituality in the changing of the seasons because each season brings with it particular themes or weather or different kinds of traditions, all kinds of things, whether you're in an agricultural society or you're in an urban society. And so there's a lot of different spiritual aspects to the solstice that we're going to be talking about today. I don't know, maybe because I was an English major, I like talking about themes. So I really find that I always love taking time when seasons change to just sort of pause and reflect, and even sometimes I set little goals like what do I want for this season, or what do I want to manifest, or what goals do I want to accomplish. But you can also just kind of look at what the natural world is doing and have that be mirrored in your goals or your practices as well. I don't know, it's easier to go outside when it's nice out than it is to try to do that in the dead of winter sometimes. And there's so many other practices, not just because the weather's nice, but because we can kind of soak up the sun or because nature is very abundant. There's just so many different ways that we can look at the season and its themes and be able to kind of take those into our practice. And so the themes of summer solstice are usually about illumination, which makes sense because we've got a ton of sunlight.
Full sun,
Same
right?
with, yeah, vitality and life force also. Sometimes also expansion because things tend to grow really well over the summer, a lot of things. And expression, expressing yourself, whether it's like creatively or verbally or how you adorn your body or all of those things. Celebration because we made it through the winter and the spring, and also just because who doesn't love a reason to celebrate? And in many countries, there are a lot of like patriotic events in the summertime or even around the summertime, like because there's Bastille Day and there's the 4th of July, and there's like all kinds of things in different places. And then also another theme is peak growth. So just being at kind of like, the peak of some kind of like becoming or movement towards goals a little bit more, or movement towards what you want, how you want to grow, that kind of thing.
Well, and always when I look up Litha, when I was learning about the wheel of the year, it really struck me always it was play, childlike play. It's really emphasis on Leo or and that in tarot, that's the 8, strength, right, with the
Mhm.
lion.
Yes.
And so the myth around Hercules and the lion, when he beats the lion and then he wears it always, like the head of the lion rests on his head, and it's like a cape worn by him, and it's one of the ways we distinguish him in the artwork and things. That's how we know it's Hercules. So, that myth of overcoming yourself through play is maybe a really important way to honor summer solstice, not take yourself so seriously. Be a little bit more lighthearted. And as I thought on this theme of plays, I was getting ready for this. I'm moving, as you can probably tell, hotel room behind me. And I have a son that's in a wheelchair permanently, and he's an adult. And I was thinking back on summer solstice over the years and play. And often the play that's suggested is go for a hike or, build a bonfire, do something, go pick your vegetables out of your garden. It's all very physical, often, which makes sense. It's outside, it's summer. But for those of us that maybe don't have access to that, or it isn't for us at this time in our life for whatever reason, I was thinking, Jen, about what you're working on right now, the classes you're teaching about a sacred practice through writing
Mhm.
and journaling, and how that can be play too. And you can write a creative story. You could make some music. There's all kinds of creativity that doesn't involve something physical that I don't think we really talk about when we talk about Litha or solstice, because most activities are oriented, like the rest of the world, to a physically active person. It's just been present with me right now, especially as we're trying to navigate and make things work for him. It's brought it to my mind, and I just wanted to note that, like, if you're listening and maybe you're not feeling well, or maybe you have a disability, that there are ways to honor this that don't have to be physical, and that, we'd love to hear some of your ways that you honor it that are less physical. For me, I I don't know. I always think I'm going to build a bonfire, but I never do. So being realistic with yourself too, about your time and your bandwidth and your energy, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily a disability. It can just be where you're at in life, and that it's okay to play. Um, in astrology, we balance anything that's out of balance with the opposite sign. And so in summer solstice, the opposite is the winter solstice, right? So Leo or Capricorn. And Capricorn is about one step at a time. And so if the Leo is feeling out of too big, too crazy at summer, you can balance it by shrinking it down to one step at a time, doing the next thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and we'll get back to the main topic, but think of ways to play that maybe aren't so traditional, that right, were you allowed to speak and say what you wanted to as a child? Maybe this is time to give voice to that person. Things like that.
I love that. And also, I think I mean, we're not really dogmatic about anything. So I think anything can be adapted or kind of shifted over to what works for you because um, uh, it isn't necessarily I don't think you have to do anything huge either when you're honoring the solstice. I think even just a little bit of reflection is good enough. So I feel like it's not you don't have to put a lot of pressure on yourself that you need to be outside. But it is also a good time to reconnect with like the nature because it's all in its fullest bloom for the most part. And so maybe it's not being out in nature, maybe it is the feeling of warmth with the sun or abundance or, things kind of buzzing with activity. Maybe it means joining
Mm.
like a community celebration. Here in Utah this weekend is our annual arts fair over the solstice. There's a lot of different ways to kind of either be with people or go inward or both. And you're still honoring the solstice, even if you're not, I don't know, out there worshiping the sun for a long time or anything like that.
Well, and part of sun worship, this we lived in Seattle for like 5 seconds for a while, but I have a good friend who was there for a long time, and I'm from Arizona. That's where I grew up, and she said you would think that Arizona people are sun worshipers, but you're not. People from Seattle are. Everyone pulls their kids out of school when there's a day of sun. They like go and just bask in the sun. And so I always think of Seattle when I think of summer solstice, of that basking in the sun. Go take a nap under a tree, don't get sunburned.
Totally.
If you're less melanated challenged than I am, then you don't have to use the tree. But for people like me, use the shade of the tree, but be outside in the warmth. There
Right.
is something healing, vitamin D3 if nothing else, right? Let's get a little sunlight. But
Yeah.
it relaxes the muscles. It invokes wellness in the body. Warmth is a healing tool. And so, it's just to be in the sun, just to be in connection with vitality has a positive impact on the body, and I think on your spiritual practice. It does on mine. It reconnects me to um I think I have a little too much Capricorn and Aquarius in me, a little too much Saturn, to remember that it can be flowy and easy. The plants are not working super hard in the summer to
Yeah.
grow. It's just easy. And so connecting back into ease and flow of warmth and abundance, like you said, there is a plethora of water and food and fuel and all of the things are in abundance in the summer. Life is meant to be easier. And we talk about solstice as the time to it's the peak. So we can get all of these things done, right? Solstice in the winter was rest, and this is the peak of activity, but it's not hard. It's still ease and flow peak activity. And I think there's a big distinction between those two.
I totally agree, and I feel like, I don't know, modern life can kind of pull us out of those rhythms, and so being able to take a moment, whether it's at the solstice or, I mean, anytime really, but it can feel a lot like you're getting back into that particular rhythm. Um, when I was lucky enough to go to Kenya last year, and I wanted to go see the animals because I haven't, except in, I don't know, zoos, that kind of thing.
Right.
And they had they have a lovely national park in Nairobi, and it's basically just a ton of wildlife. Well, they only do that in the morning.
Mm.
You could like early morning, you can go in on safari because literally the animals are just kind of resting in the afternoon because it's too hot. So in the morning
Yeah.
they're active, they go, do their thing, water themselves, eat whatever they do. And then they kind of just go hibernate until it gets cooler in the evening, or I don't know about hibernate, but rest anyway. And
Siesta.
so yes. And so as a gal that really likes to sleep in, I was like, "Oh, man, I have to get up at, like, 5 o'clock in the morning," but that's when I could see the animals, and so I feel like one of the good things about, the rhythms of nature, whether it is because it's too warm or it's too cold or it's, just warm enough or whatever, you can definitely follow those kinds of rhythms and say, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do my ritual or my celebration in the morning or in the evening when it's a little cooler." You can do whatever you like, but I think even just taking cues from the habits of animals and our, nature is a really great way to honor the solstice. And also, I think when you were talking about play, I felt so I think that's so undervalued, like play, whimsy, and then I also think rest is. And so
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes being playful is like playing hard and then taking a little rest, that kind of thing too. So it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm just going to do all my chores and then I'm going to rest in the afternoon. It can also be, we're going to plan a celebration or that kind of thing. There's a website and it's called, I think, Bizarre American Holidays. And
Hmm.
it's like a project from a class a million years ago, but it has like really random holidays for every single day of the year, like National Tortilla Chip Day, and, like, um,
That's
there was
awesome.
another one that was, like, Smile at a Stranger Day, like,
Amazing.
and it was just super fun to celebrate little things like that, and it's not like you have to have a party for every single day of the year or whatever, but just being able to be like, "Ooh, maybe we need some chips and salsa because it's National Tortilla Chip Day," or something like that. There's something about celebrating even kind of small things or even things that they're not like they might not have great historical significance, but they mean something to you. That's really fun.
Yeah, I really love that. I like the idea of every year for me for solstice, I always think I'm going to get up with sunrise because that's always like that's solstice. You greet the sun. That's what solstice is, right?
Yeah.
And so I always have this, and I'm always looking at when sunrise is on that day that I'm celebrating, and I never get up ever. But I set my alarm every year, like I'm going to get up.
I love it.
And, that's become my ritual actually is pretending like I'm gonna get up, but don't actually do it because of rest. Every year, I'm like, "Oh, I should get up and greet the sun." But we do stay up late in our home. It's a house full of night owls, and I'm talking 3, 4 a.m., we go to bed. So if I'm getting up at 5, I've had an hour of sleep. So, honoring yourself in this season of traditions and ideas of connecting to your vitality, I think rest is, especially in America, I don't know that it's as undervalued everywhere else in the world, but here in the United States, it is extremely undervalued. And it's It's something that I think we need to be conscious about protecting.
I love because we were talking about the themes earlier and because I like doing theme stuff. One of the things about summer is that it's about expansion, right? And so we talked in our spring equinox episode about how most people make goals in January. But if we're going by the rhythm of the seasons, January is when we should just be resting and preparing and just, like kind of embracing that, the darker time of at least in the northern hemisphere,
Mhm.
of like nature, and then we it'd be better to set goals in the spring and then, if because spring is when things are waking up. So it's really fun to kind of say, okay, well, what goals did or what ideas or celebratory or ritual or spiritual practices or whatever, like, what is it that I want to do? And then in the summer, you can check on not just how it's going, but if there's areas of resistance, right? Like returning to the rhythm of summer, whether you're outside in it or not, can be making sure that you're not resisting your own expansion in different ways or being honest about it. It doesn't mean you have to push through everything, but maybe you might be holding back on your light a little bit. Maybe there's a part of you, whether it's a project or a personality trait or whatever, that really wants to be expressed more fully. Or, what would it feel like to kind of step into the spotlight a little bit more? Not necessarily, becoming, I don't know, a class actor or scientist or not like that. But if there are ways that you're still kind of keeping your light a little, I don't know, contained, the summer is a good time to kind of check in and just kind of say, okay, I think I want to be expanding. And so even small things like Lola was saying, sitting in the sun for a little bit with the vitamin D, which we love. Even like sitting for 5 minutes with no agenda and just kind of soaking it up, or maybe journaling, like, where am I being invited to kind of show up more fully or even lead more fully? And then also just noticing, whether you're outside in it or you're inside looking out, what about nature really feels alive to you and how can you kind of embrace that or mimic that in your own life?
One of my favorite practices along those lines is to really observe a flower or a tree, an individual
Love
plant,
it.
and see how it looks so unique and different than any other plant. We act like an oak is an oak or a tulip is a tulip, yet every single one has its own unique deviation and it honors itself. It doesn't try and, where we're talking about where are you holding back your light, it doesn't try and conform its light to the model of a tree or a flower. It's itself. And so spending those 5 minutes just seeing how a tree is wrong, maybe like a branch doesn't look aesthetically in the correct place or
Right?
something. And an artist might edit that and make it look more symmetrical in some way, that nature is not editing itself in that way. It is allowing full expression. And in the summer, we get to see that. We get to see it on display. And it's a lesson, I think, if we can spend those 5 minutes just being present in nature. And if you can't get there physically, watch it on YouTube. There's tons of nature things on YouTube, and it has the same impact on your body as being in nature, the current research says. But obviously, if you can get out there, that would be ideal. But if not, no big deal. And I really love this idea of where are you holding back your light, Jen? I think that is $1 million question. I think it's really easy for us to do in our society, to be polite, to make others feel good, for all of the reasons that we dim ourselves so that other people will shine brighter or not feel bad or won't be embarrassed, or because we're embarrassed to stand out. And so really evaluate that about yourself of, are you dimming yourself for the convenience of others or for the comfort of others? And let your weird branch grow. It's fine. You're meant to grow that way. That this is the time of growing. It's not the time of pruning. We do that in the fall. We're going to fix what we did wrong in the summer, in the fall. It's not the correction time. We're not there yet.
Nope.
So just grow and unabashedly grow.
Oh, I love that. That's a good word. Unabashedly. I feel like
Mhm.
the cool thing about nature is that it's not thinking, okay, I need to make sure I grow this way or that way, or it's just responding to the increased light. And that is really important for us too. Like I have a very large flowering pear tree in my yard, and in the parkway strip are three smaller trees. Well, the one that gets shade from the big tree has figured out how to like make its branches kind of grow a little taller in a couple places so that it gets the light that it's being shaded from. And so I also think of it as kind of being resourceful, just responding to and figuring out wherever you want to bloom. And it doesn't have to he like that little tree does not look symmetrical at all. It's very it's a little ski wampus. It almost looks like a like a like a fork, like it has tines instead of branches, but all of that is it's still very cute and fun and, I wouldn't change it. But I think one of the things that, we can just respond to the opportunities we're given. We can embody summer by wearing like brighter colors. We can kind of try something new, like open ourselves to new
Mhm.
things, especially if we get invited to do something and we think, oh, I never would have signed up for that myself, but I think I might need to do that, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Um, and you can just kind of say, you can create something, whether it's, I don't know, a fabulous barbecue dish or art or you got like a new tattoo or whatever it is, and just share it with people, because then that's kind of stepping into that light of I'm going to share it, whether it's on social media or with my neighbors or whatever it is. It just feels like it's a good time to sort of like get out in community, but at whatever pace you feel comfortable with.
I mean, if you got little kids, it's a great time for a lemonade stand. Lemons and sun, they
Yes.
just kind of go together. Or even just making. I babysat for a friend once, and I just made lemonade with their daughter, and she had never made lemonade before, and it was like the
What?
best adventure of her life. Well, she was like 4, so it's not
Oh,
surprising
okay.
she had never made it yet.
Okay.
But it was like the best adventure of her life, and she wanted to use the knife, and I'm like, I don't know if you're allowed to use knife. Like it was a whole thing, but she had a blast because it was just something simple and
Yep.
space and time to enjoy summer. I really, really, really like what you said about your tree. And I think it's important as you were talking, it really hit me of the words of shame and of judgment that we can, again, the opposite of Leo. I tell people all the time, Leos need constant praise. A Leo has to have positive feedback constantly, just like we need air and water. That's a Leo's need, is to be reminded that they're beautiful and good and brilliant and the star. They need to be the star. The reason they need that is a Leo is very, 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 very internally hard on themselves. They don't have a lot of positive self-talk naturally. They have to grow into that to see if they're healthy, to see themselves that way. And so, um, the summer is not the time for shunning or shaming or polishing. It's the time for shining. And the tree is not shunning or shaming itself for needing to grow that way. Because life gave us certain circumstances, we make certain choices. And then we look back and Monday morning quarterback and say, what was I doing? Or, it's soccer season. What's the soccer? What is the soccer equivalent of quarterback? I don't know sports. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We get the
So
general.
that the idiom fails. I'm sorry. But looking back and judging ourselves saying, why did I do that? I could have done this or this or this. The tree is not doing that. The tree is like, I need light. I'm going to be a fork now and I'm going to get the light. And there's no shunning. There's no shaming. There's no shoulds
Mhm.
for the tree. It adapted to a circumstance that it didn't control, and it's thriving. And I think that we adapt to circumstances with the best knowledge we have in that moment. And then we look back and think that was dumb or not good enough. And summer is not that time. Summer is the time to say, I'm the best fork ever. Oh, look how beautiful I grow. That's what it's time for. So I really like the tree visual. I think it can help people because if you saw that tree, you might kind of laugh or chuckle at how it's growing, and that's kind of unique. Yes, be unique. This is your time to
Love it.
create anything, to express everything. And
Yes.
a lot of that can be very healing, especially if you're not a person that expresses a lot. If you can just name the emotion, do nothing else. Studies show if you can just out loud say the emotion, it will decrease the impact. So I'm feeling angry
Mm,
actually decreases the impact of that anger on your system almost more than anything else you can do. Hitting a wall, doing all of those things that we've taught people to do, it does nothing. It doesn't release, it actually increases. So just naming, I think maybe because it enters a different part, communication is a different part of the brain. Just naming, I feel joyful, helps you release it through your body. And since this is expression season, release it through your body. Whether you dance it out or sing it out or say it out, release it through your body.
I love that because that's really just another form of expression. Right?
Yes.
All of those are just way and that's summer is very much about kind of living out loud a little bit more or expressing ourselves, celebrating accomplishments. And people get together a lot more during summer or nice weather anyway. Um but I think that uh sometimes like we just keep kind of plowing away and working. I worked at for a company once. It was actually it acquired a company here, but it was based out of New York, and they do something in the summer from Memorial Day through Labor Day, where we could all work 4 10-hour days and then get half a day off on Friday because they want to take advantage of the light. They want people to be able to get outside and do things and that kind of thing. And I thought, that is such an amazing policy. It was something I'd never heard of before, let alone worked for a company that did that. But this is a season meant for, doing more versus like, I don't know, working harder or that kind of thing, getting out a little more. We have a little bit more daylight in the evenings, for example. And so there's a lot of different ways that, if we were kind of doing the same thing, that could work in a quieter season. But if we're in this kind of fullness of season, it's fun to be able to have your activities, your spiritual practices, your expression, all of that out in, eh, out in full view.
Yes, I agree with that. I think I keep saying writing, and I realized while you were talking, it's astrological.
Oh,
Uranus has entered Gemini, and Gemini is like you start at Aries, you move into Taurus, you go into Gemini. By Gemini, a baby is learning communication, language, and we often see Gemini significant in charts of writers. And so,
oh,
Gemini getting hit with Uranus, which is high mind, this is a time for inspirational, inspired writing, like the muses have touched you. But not just writing, communication and other creativity too, but specifically around language.
love
So,
it.
write your poems, write. This is a great time to express that in 2026, this summer solstice, this year. That's the energy of now. And so it's a great time to express those things and to reflect on what hasn't been expressed within you that's it probably feels like you're going to break if you don't express it is how Uranus will feel. That it's breaking inside of you to not express those things. And if you've done a good job of expressing how you feel along the way, then this is probably a joyful expression bursting out of you. And if you haven't, there may be a lot of pent up things. And it's okay to express them. But this is where I would maybe get in touch with, again, like Jennafer, who expertly teaches these writing classes on how to journal these things out, how to express these things. She's amazing at it. Whether you get to take from Jennafer or not, I don't know if she has room. I know she
Thank
gets
you.
full up or not, but someone out there does this too, I'm sure. and find someone and some place, because again, summer is about community. It is about being part of things. It's not the time to hole up, in our dark caves. It's the time to be out there. And in June is also in the United States Pride Month, and so there's a lot of those kinds of activities going on. So find a place to express even maybe those things that you've been suppressing specifically, that you can share those things. Find someplace safe to share those things. That's what I'm trying to say. The
Love
safe
that.
aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I even just love I find it so cool that that there's so much color in summer and, usually and I don't know, like quieter or like I don't know, we've got a lot of like cloud cover or if we want to go back to Seattle, there's a lot of cloud cover there. Um
Yeah.
And it just feels like even just embracing color in your home or just I don't know, I just keep thinking the colorfulness of things and the colorfulness of pride celebrations, the colorfulness of nature, like they just kind of coincide. And so it's a great way it's a great time to have any kind of event to be proud about because it's the summer is like a time for us to be expressing and expanding and being out there, and I like that a lot.
One of the traditions our family used to have, I haven't done it for a while because all my kids are gone. So it's kind of, I don't know, I guess it felt weird to just be Scott and I saying this to each other, because hopefully we're kind to each other all the time and don't need a special occasion. But we would go around and share things that we were proud of that maybe it was embarrassing to share with anyone else. So is there a group of friends that you could get together with, or
Oh,
family, and share what you wish someone had given you a pat on the back for? I did this really great thing, or I was super nice to this person and no one even noticed, but it was a big deal and it was hard for me and I deserve praise for that. Can you be your own cheerleader right now? And we do better when community cheers us on. So is there a community? And if not, share in the comments so we can be your cheerleaders, so we can say good job, well done, because this is the time of expanding ourselves and seeing ourselves in our fullness. And
yes, and celebrating our accomplishments and
yes.
small and big and everything in between.
Well, and Leo, the way I say Leo rules the sun in astrology, and the way I talk about, if you're living in alignment with your sun path, you have joy. That's the feeling. If you're in joy, if you are enjoying life, you are living in alignment with your sun path.
Mm,
So whatever your sun is, whether you're a Leo or not, all of us have a sun, and the expression of that, when we're living in alignment with our own unique expression, our weird fork tree, when we're being the fork, then we have joy. So do you have joy? And part of that, for some people, the joy is being seen and recognized and acknowledged. And so find people that can see you and recognize you and acknowledge you, so that you can step in more fully into that joy. I think we underestimate praise in the human psyche, that when someone is praised, it's like we can move mountains suddenly. And we just want to do more of that thing. It's just psychology 101, right? Like, you praise someone and then they go about doing more of that thing. And we as adults get to be aware of that and get to go seek that and find that. And, I try and cultivate relationships where we cheer each other on, where I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. And it's genuine, and that they can say it back to me. Seek that in your families, in your friend groups, in your communities. I hope we're creating that here.
I love that. And yes, we are happy to be your cheerleader. So, you tell us whatever's going on and that you even if you just want a tiny pat on the back, or a shout out or whatever, that's fine by us. We're super happy to help, which I really love. Yeah, I think the other thing that maybe we don't talk about as much because we're talking about like the fullness of summer is the solstice isn't really only light. And it's not only about light because we're going to have the light is going to start to kind of wane as our hemisphere tips again. And so tips shifts. There we go.
Tilts,
That's better.
tilts, yeah.
Tilts. Thank you. That's much better. Yes. I was right with the T, but not the yeah, anyway. Because after, like, the solstice, summer solstice is a peak, right? And
Correct.
then it kind of starts to shorten again, the light. And sometimes it's really hard to think about that because I don't know, it's nice out and we've still got plenty of good weather left and that sort of thing. But honestly, we are kind of at a tipping point with the solstice. And so being able to ask things like, okay, well, I'm expanding or I'm trying to celebrate, or whether it's myself or someone else or whatever, where does that maybe need a little grounding? And I really liked, some of the points that you had put together for this as well.
Yeah, yeah, this is one of my little, I don't know what you call it. It's something that I always think about with solstice because in winter solstice, it's the birth of the sun, and we celebrate the sun a ton in winter solstice instead of, hey, we're in the dark and the sun is just starting to grow. Now we're in full sun, and then we celebrate the sun again. And so again, we need that balance, right?
Yep.
We need the awareness that this is the peak and now we have to go downhill, right? We're going down, and this is the beginning of the underworld journey for the sun, for the hero. And what is your underworld journey? What, where, and you wrote amazing questions, way better than I could have written. Like, I want you to share those. They're like, Jennafer is the best editor on planet Earth. I say, bleh,
Oh,
and Jen like turns it into like music. Beautiful.
oh, thank you. That's
Mm,
so nice. Yeah, I feel like I'm so glad you brought this up because it doesn't always feel like we're entering a darker time during the summer
mm-mm,
solstice. So it's one of those things where, if we just want to dig a tiny bit deeper, there's a little bit more like richness in it and a little bit more complexity. So I really love that. I feel like the biggest thing for our questions is like how are we going to stay rooted, right? Like all of our
mm.
plants that are growing are rooted well, or they wouldn't necessarily be able to be responding to the light. And so what is it that helps me stay rooted while I expand or while I express myself or while I celebrate, that kind of thing. But I think we can also ask ourselves things like, am I maybe like overextending myself in the name of growth? Am I doing too much? Do I need to be a little more measured in my approach? And then, maybe even how do we prepare for the light to recede, right? What is it that we need to do to kind of embrace that growing shadow, whether it's internally or externally, as we kind of enter this, a different period? Because even in summer, we're still preparing for winter. We're still getting food ready. We're still, cutting our firewood, chopping our firewood, things like that. And so there is a lot of, even though it's like fun and expansive, it can also be a time for preparation and for being able not necessarily to like slow down, but not losing yourself in kind of the peak of this and not keeping in mind what the reduction in the light will give you. Like just kind of acting like it's gonna last forever really doesn't necessarily work, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think a way to stay rooted, right? We talked at the very beginning that Litha is always associated with the sun, childlike play. Children don't tend to overextend themselves. They scream if they get overextended. Where's my dinner? Where's my nap?
Yep.
I'm tired. I'm hungry. I feel ick. Whatever it is, they don't overextend. They let us know. They express loudly, this is not okay. And so, I also think of it's so apropos the grounding and the rooted questions because they are having to do with the dark. The roots are in the dark. And
Hmm.
so, what is inside of you in the dark that is the rootedness that allows that full growth? Do you know what that is? Do you know what you're rooted in? What are your values? What are your priorities? Because I can run around all summer preparing for winter scattered like a chicken with my head cut off, or I can be rooted and grounded and preparing for winter in a way that will actually benefit me. Do I need more rest? Am I overextending? Right? I love those questions, Jen. They're so good that the point of nature and the seasons is they're always trying to tip back into balance. Maybe that's why you got the word tip,
Yeah.
because we're always right. We're always seeking balancing, and that's what the seasons are doing. They're swinging back into balance. They reach a peak and they immediately start back the other way, and then peak and go the other way. So you can't really let go of the dark no matter how bright the sun is. It doesn't work that way. We live in a duality world. So the dark is always there. It's just what portion of it. And letting go of it, I think, is when people get too egocentric or too all of the downsides of Leo. It's because they've lost their dark. They've lost that deep rootedness within themselves, and they're only seeking light from other people. And the dark is what gives you your own light. It's where your own light can grow from. Your own roots have to be solid in something inside of you. So do you know what those are? During
Mhm.
solstice, it's a great time to ponder that, because if you don't feel joy in solstice, if you're not in enjoyment, and solstice feels heavy or stressful, something's not rooted correctly in you. Something needs to be reworked. You haven't spent enough time on family or business or health. Something's out of alignment. And if in the powerful abundance of summer, you don't feel like ease that summer brings with it naturally, that energy, then that's a good sign that you need to do a little probably endarkment work and get rooted better. So excellent, excellent way of asking those questions. We maybe can share those on social media for you guys to
Sure.
ask. I think they'd be really good ones. And she has others in here. Maybe we could share those.
Yeah, that would be great. I
Yeah.
also just feel like I think that there are so many being able to hold both of those things is so important because it doesn't you don't lose what's in the present preparing for what's coming,
Mm-mm.
or you don't always live in like the future. You're trying to also appreciate what's happening right now. And so the idea of groundedness or rootedness is so great because it also helps you appreciate what's going on. And it also helps you go, okay, winter's coming, but I don't not yet.
Mm-hmm.
I have time. I can figure some things out or that kind of thing. I feel like so many people get very like caught up in planning what's next that they're not always enjoying what's happening right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all over the world, people celebrate the solstice or the summer, that kind of thing, without needing productivity attached to it at all, right?
Right.
So, in all kinds of different cultures, they celebrate whether it's harvest or it's just the fullness of the sun or it's the fruits of those labors, right? Like people, we have state fairs towards the end of the summer where we're like, who grew the best tomato or whatever so
Right.
that we can celebrate what we've accomplished as a community and really appreciate that people can apparently make like life-size sculptures out of butter. I had never heard of that before I moved to Utah, but it's a very big part of their state fair. But anyway, I like there's just so much creativity and there's so much and even in like raising livestock, all of those things at the state fair, there's also art. There's just so
Yes.
many things that we celebrate in those kinds of situations in a community way, or county fairs or whatever. It just feels like what while you're planning, you can also be really enjoying yourself. You can be tending your garden. You can be dancing around your living room, like you said, or you could be kind of honoring play and joy without needing to feel productive in the as
Yes.
a like a justification for it or that kind of thing. You can just be silly with your kiddos or the neighbors or your pet or friends or whatever, and you can just really enjoy um and honestly, I think sometimes we have the best sunsets this time of year too.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're just kind of watching like the colors change or that kind of thing, it's just such a fun it's a very fun way to do things. There's a restaurant outside of Austin, Texas, and when the sun goes down, um, it's on a lake, so you can see kind of and it's facing like the sunset, it's facing the west, so the sun sets. They ring a little bell and everyone toasts, with
Hmm.
whatever they're drinking to the sunset. And so that has nothing to do with, like, it doesn't do anything except celebrate,
Right.
a beautiful thing that happened in nature. So I think sometimes we just, I don't know, especially as Americans, we tend to think we can have fun, but after we do all of our chores and we cross everything off our list, it's very much like the life equivalent of you don't get dessert unless you eat your
Mhm.
vegetables. And so, but sometimes it's fun to just go do something and not think, oh, I've really got to make sure that I'm doing something or I'm prepared. Just enjoying the moment or enjoying what's before you is a really great way to honor summer, I think.
I really love that. Have fun. What is fun to you?
Yes.
Maybe that's your celebration this year is figuring out what is fun to you.
Yes.
Maybe
I
try a
love
bunch of different things just for fun.
totally love it.
Me too.
Awesome.
Oh, thanks you
This has been
guys.
so great. Thank
We're
you all so much.
we're so happy that we get to do this with you. Would you
Definitely.
please like and follow us and share in comments how you celebrate your solstice? Or if you need a cheerleader, share what you need a cheerleader for.
Yep.
We got you.
Either way. Yep. We're here for you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good day and a good solstice.